The bigger the toy, the smarter you have to be to use it. AI is transforming our world with our participation and also without it. That lamp has been rubbed and opened, and the AI genie is out. It cannot go back. So what do we do in a world of AI as professionals? How do we embrace it? How should we think of it? And how will it affect the way we think? Discussing these questions with me and more today is Stuart Woolmington. Welcome to the show, Stu.
Thanks, Kieran. Nice
great
to be here.
It's great to have you on.
Good to be on your show.
I asked ChatGPT earlier how you were doing today, and it said it doesn't have the capability of knowing that. So I'm going to ask
How
you.
I was doing today.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you instead. How are you doing, and what do you have going on at the moment?
I haven't chatted to ChatGPT today, so it wouldn't know how I'm doing, but I'm doing well. And we've got a lot of things on the go at the moment, especially in the learning space. That's what our business is about for corporate markets. So, and very, very excited to chat about AI and how it's impacting us as people, I suppose our lives, our learnings, and industry as a whole, and what's valuable with it. So that's
Amazing.
how I'm doing. Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. Just here to talk and take up our time.
Good, man.
Would you like to give us some background on AI as a field of interest for you as a business owner?
Well, I think AI has been interesting to many people, but many people out there have not understood or just let it grow without understanding what's actually happening.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm a technical boffin at AI, but I have been fascinated with how quickly it's grown and how even the experts have said, okay, well, we can determine AI to do this and determine AI to do that. Or there's been experts who said, no, we're 10 years away from valuable AI. And that's not been the case. So for me, I have just watched it more generally, but specifically in the areas where I think it can impact our clients, which is mostly companies and corporate market, and then for human beings in the learning space, which I've been surprised with AI and the advancements. So let me give you an example. A prediction maybe a while ago was that AI is going to take over or be massively influential in the legal fraternity and the accounting fraternity, because it's built on logic and there's so much information out there, and it'll be years before it impacts creativity, the creative industries. And actually, as much as it has impacted legal and assisted accounting and those sorts of things, the dramatic impact has been more on the creative space. The ability to in language, the ability in visualization and video. So, but maybe we should even start, and I'll be guided by you, but sometimes people assume they understand what AI is, and they just use the language now, AI, or AGI, or embedded AI. And people go, well, what is the foundation? What's the basics? So.
Well, tell me, what is AI?
So, artificial intelligence is really where computers and robots are learning and use various algorithms, which a lot of people throw around AI and machine learning as two different things. But machine learning is really the foundation. So if we had to say, as human beings, how do we learn? Well, we've got to have a brain, and then we've got to have a process of thinking. And in the computer world, AI has hardware, it has a brain, and it has machine learning. And machine learning are really algorithms and models that really allow a machine or a computer to do what we do and think like we do.
So you say machine learning.
Yeah.
Help me understand. How can I teach my machine?
So machines are taught in a similar way to human beings. They have set patterns. So if we go to school, if we think of human beings who go to school, teaching through school is got various patterns and various ways of learning. It's the same with machine learning. There are various algorithms, which are the patterns, and the models in which we are able to give direction to a computer to actually learn something, or a robot to learn something. So machine learning is really the ability of the machine to learn through algorithms, and that gives you intelligence or artificial intelligence.
Now, in some way or another, that's been a thing in the past to some degree.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm searching anything on YouTube, it will recommend based off my previous searches
Yes.
content that would be relevant to me.
Yes.
Something I might find interesting.
Yes.
Now, that's a kind of machine learning, isn't it?
100%. I mean, that's where the foundations of really machine learning happened. Like us, the human beings, the older we get, the more data we have and we remember. The internet, like you said, you go onto Google, or we go onto Google, or whichever our search engine is, and we investigate things. That builds knowledge, and that knowledge turns into intelligence for the machine. But we wouldn't have had machine learning or AI if it wasn't for the internet.
Absolutely.
Because the internet is just democratized knowledge.
I mean, computers, the internet, cell phones have changed the way we learn and interact
100%.
with knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, who
Is AI the next step in that?
Well, very good question. What is AI? AI, I think, is the next innovative technology that people are uncertain about where it's going. So it's so new that we don't know its impact, and we don't know what's going to come from it.
Yeah.
So it is definitely the new kid on the block.
I mean, 2 years ago, you wouldn't know what products would come up now. The things that we have that we interact with on a daily basis are crazy. 2 years from now, we have no idea what kind of AI products will exist. What we think of as cutting edge now may be commonplace, and what is commonplace now may be outdated already.
100%.
That has always been the case with technology, but never before has it happened in such a short time frame. How do we know where to invest our time and skills, where time has become such an expensive resource to invest and commit to?
So time is important. I think when you look at it from AI's perspective, artificial intelligence, time is becoming almost irrelevant because a machine and its abilities now are able to learn just so much quicker than us as human beings.
Yeah.
So there are massive advantages with time. And I think that's what's caught a lot of people by surprise is time. We knew that it took us 12 years to go through a school. It is X amount of time to go through a degree. If you look at the company world or the commercial world, it takes you X amount of months to teach a salesperson.
Yeah.
It takes you X amount of months to train up an accountant. It's so much time to teach your values or your induction and things like that. To human beings, time is definitive. With artificial intelligence, time is almost irrelevant because as soon as one machine knows how to do something, 10,000 machines instantly know how to do exactly the same thing. So I think that's a paradigm that we've never seen as human beings. So time is irrelevant. The challenge in the AI world is the computing power and even energy now. The amount of energy that's needed to process ChatGPT is absolutely incredible.
So with that in mind, it's now August 2024. What advancements have been made recently in AI?
Sure. I don't know if anybody knows all the advancements, but I think what's generally out there and is generally known is the advancements of LLMs or large language models.
Yeah. So
you have in the Western world, we probably know more about what Google's doing, what Meta's doing, what Microsoft are doing with OpenAI. And large language models are what we commonly known as now ChatGPT and their levels, their various levels. There's Gemini in the Elon Musk world, or the XAI is Grok.
Yeah.
And I think the other one is Llama, Meta's Llama.
Yeah.
So what people would know predominantly out there if they're using a chat GPT type tool is anything from just asking simple questions to research to getting a technology like a chat GPT to actually prepare you documentation and duplicate things very, very accurately.
I mean, now, geez, it used to be the case that you asked your GP. Now you ask your GPT.
100%, actually, yes. Yeah. Whether doctors like you asking ChatGPT is another question, but and I think that's moved. So the LLMs moved from language, which is the large language models, into the more creative space. So what it's done with words and how it uses words to create language. It then went into translation very quickly.
Yeah.
It's now moved into pictures. So where there were words, now there's pictures. And you can very, very quickly get AI to create a type of picture for you, and even videos. It's moving into the video space very, very quickly as products. And I think that's what's still to be seen. Is it useful, and how is it being used throughout the world? Yeah. And those, particularly, that's very interesting because in the learning space, in the creative learning space, that is a surprise. It's not being used to the degree that it could be, and companies are not using it yet to the degrees that they will be able to.
Yeah, I think it's a very exploratory space as individuals, but as businesses, where we devote time and resources is always a risk. How can organizations embrace AI?
Well, I think the people inside organizations should empower their individuals or people in the business to buy, play with, and use AI technology in programs within the business. If we are restricting those things, the business is at risk. So just think about how many other innovations have come along in the accounting space, for example, where technology has made accounting so much simpler. The same is happening inside organizations with AI. The technology is becoming so clever that if you don't allow your people to play with that technology or those products, what tends to happen is somebody else who's smaller, competitor, an individual, can actually start doing what you should be doing as a business.
Absolutely. I mean, I can imagine for employers, the concern with technology is always to reduce time and resources. That's the value of it. I think as employees, it's how do we manage our time? How can tech be a resource for me and not a threat to me? How can I make myself more valuable by using and including AI tools and resources with my work?
Yeah.
How do I come as an employee to a business with GPT as a resource? How can I do that with AI?
Yeah. Well, I think people will be asking quite soon, so have you got an avatar? And the people who have tapped more into the meta world and that world, people will be saying yes. But very quickly, people will be saying, well, have you got a avatar voice, your voice as an avatar? And a lot of people have. A lot of the disinformation that's out there at the moment, it's sad, but it's being used more negatively than positively. People are using voices for and images for the incorrect purposes, but that's what, unfortunately, the technology is doing.
I mean, with that in mind, is AI ethical?
Well, I mean, that's been the question since I think it was spoken about in the 60s or the 50s. But more and more it's becoming evident that the same as human beings have biases, AI has a bias. Why? Because it is just using, its basis is human knowledge, so the knowledge that's out there. So an example is, it's quite crazy, but in the employee space where AI has been used in employing people, there has been reports shown where AI is actually biased towards male than it is towards female. Not because it's inherently biased, it's because there were more men in the workplace historically than, let's say, females. So it is only using our knowledge and our understandings as a baseline.
Yeah.
So we haven't reached AGI yet, which is really artificial general intelligence, where it can think totally for itself,
Yeah.
Or what some call embedded AI. But yes, it can be very ethical, but it can also be unethical, depending on who's using it.
I asked ChatGPT this question. Would you like to know what it said?
Yeah, tell me.
AI can be ethical if it adheres to principles such as fairness, transparency, accountability, and respect for privacy. However, ethical challenges arise when AI systems are biased, like you said, lack transparency, or are used in ways that harm individuals or society. Ensuring AI is ethical requires careful consideration of these issues and the implementation of guidelines and regulations. So how do we regulate that? How do we take an approach as we try and educate ourselves on AI? How are we educating ourselves on ethics?
Well, I mean,
is that HR's problem?
Wouldn't it be? It could be. And within the business, I'm going to use a vehicle analogy. We wouldn't get into a vehicle today without putting on a safety belt. But 30 years ago, or not so long ago, there were companies that built the vehicle opposed to the safety belt.
Right.
It was a waste of time. It was a waste of money. It wouldn't do anything. But the guidelines had to be put in to save the human being in a car.
Yeah.
And we're at an interesting place where out there, if you look at people like Elon Musk, who was a person who invested in OpenAI and created ChatGPT with a team, moved out because he believed that they were going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And then got into warnings and trying to put in safety belts, and then realized, well, that's not going to you got to keep going down that road, but then built XAI and to compete. So he's actually trying to build safety nets and competing at the same time. And that's the challenge at the moment. Have we got enough safety belts in the car? Not at all at the moment with AI. But are the products that are using AI defective, or are they not useful? No, they're very useful.
Yeah.
We haven't played with them enough to know how to use the safety belts. I think in the broader context, like with elections and misinformation and disinformation, where it's politically motivated, there are and illegal. There are players using AI incorrectly.
Absolutely.
And it's evident.
And I mean, without regulation, there's many countries that are making massive leaps in this regard.
100%.
Because they don't really see the let's say biased necessity for holding back, and what we consider to be rights to our privacy and to the information that we're given is something that's accessible and usable for companies and for big players and their agendas.
And I think that's the challenge. At the moment, AI is a tool.
Yeah.
One of our first tools as human beings at creative development was a knife.
Yeah.
But a knife can butter bread, feed people, or it can be used to destroy a life and kill people.
Absolutely.
And the challenge is not, is AI ethical? The challenge is the user of AI ethical?
I mean, it's amazing how these things used to be science fiction. I mean,
Yeah.
we used to talk about them as androids walking around with being half robots, half people. But now we're kind of that with our cell phones being an extension of ourselves. How can AI not be far behind for the everyday person? Imagine trying to recall every book you've ever read, every news article, every bit of information you've been fed. Now you don't have to.
Yep.
It's there for you to access based off whenever you based whatever you feed it off. You know, what could the benefit be of AI being used as a partner for human thinking?
I think for human beings, how AI should be used is, I mean, we don't have to do now a whole lot of things, like retain or hold on to information because it's easily accessible. I think when you look at where AI is going, it's moving from the computer screen to embedded AI. Now, what that means is technology or cleverness of AI inside machines, inside our car, for example. So autonomous driving without, it's not an Uber, but driving without a driver is actually very, very close. It's been worked on for many, many years, but it's very, very close. But it wouldn't have been close. And Tesla, I think, are the leaders in the space. But it wouldn't be close if they hadn't been able to add AI to their abilities and remove all of their hard code that they were used to. Another one is humanoid robots. So robots have changed. Robots used to be, and they are still, machines that build something. So in our cell phones, a robot is building various pieces. In our cars, in many, many manufacturing environments. But the humanoid robot is about to become a valuable asset, I think, in the next 5 odd years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe not so much in Africa yet, but it will be in the first world. And it'll be a race to see how the humanoid robot, that was science fiction, exactly what you were talking about so many years ago, is now used to be the teacher of human beings, or the teacher of, or the astronaut, to minimize the risk on the actual humanoid asteroid, the human asteroid. Astronaut.
I think it's definitely going to be a thing in terms of human resources to now make policies around AI resources and the combination of that with people, what people have access to, what is valuable in new hires in terms of their skill basis with AI tools, products. I mean, when you interview a designer, you want to know whether or not they can use a full Adobe suite.
Yes.
Whether they can use other programs and other platforms. It's now going to be the same with how well do you know? I keep having ChatGPT come to my mind, but there's other kind of machine learning programs that we use. Whether it be in a film editing space, whether it be in audio world, whether it be in the accounting space.
Yep.
Wherever there's data, there's something that needs to aggregate that data. And wherever there's people, there's a need to resource that data, to have it in a way that is accessible but also relevant.
Yeah.
It's a filter.
It is. I mean, data is enormously important, and it's probably one of the challenges in the learning space at the moment. Even though there's organizations with hundreds of thousands of employees, we don't have enough data sometimes to allow AI to predict certain things. However, that's changing very, very quickly. But the amount of data. And what's I find quite fascinating, especially in the learning space, is when here we use a word like learning, human learning. But now, and that is dependent on how you train me. So how an athlete is trained, or a salesperson's trained, or a manager's trained, the learning is based on good training. But where companies are spending billions of dollars now is in training, and they call it training, but they are actually training up machines to fold and iron your clothes, to train machines how to drive a car. And they're using millions and millions of hours of video to train. But to train what? To train the machine to drive the car, or the car to drive itself, or the robot to do a job. So billions of dollars are being spent at the moment to build massive data centers to train. But the training is for the machines, not the human beings. Now, the human beings, I think, will benefit down the line, but I wouldn't be surprised if we have teachers in the future who are humanoid robots. Why? Because you can get teaching online almost for free now and not have a teacher, but you will have a humanoid teacher teaching you various things.
Yeah. I was watching a TED Talk the other day, and we can probably pull up a segment of it that's looking at display-less computers are now becoming a thing, and how we interact.
Display-less computers.
Display-less, so no display.
Okay.
So.
Display-less.
For example, like your cell phone is a computer. Your watch is a computer, but we interact with them on a visual side.
Yes.
Now imagine the medium was conversational.
Yeah.
Now it's going to use language models.
Yes.
It's going to use spatial awareness modules because it's going to be able to detect what's in a room, what's making what sound. It can translate the conversation that you're having in real time. It can take out certain sounds from it. So let's say you're watching a video, and it's connected to this ecosystem. If you are, let's say, watching a live feed or something, and you're watching the news, and there's a big thing happening, you can tell, listen, take down the presenter. I want to hear what's happening in this clip. And it will remove the person speaking, and you can see what's happening in the news clip. Or, there's, fire and explosions or something like that. Can you remove that?
In real time.
In real time, yeah. And it will do that. There's a baby crying. Can you hear that? Can you remove that, please? It's distracting me from the conversation I'm having. So you could be sitting in a restaurant having a conversation like we are now, and you can ask it to just take out the sound that's around you. Now,
that's incredible.
Our ears work in such an amazing way in the world that we live in. We use them far more than we think.
No.
Our eyes take a while to register something. What color is that? How many dots are on that page? But if that information is given to our ears, how many beeps do you hear? You don't even have to think of it.
Yeah.
Is that song in tune? Not so much. That seems a bit off. Now, in terms of the AI capabilities of that, there's all the sensors that we can now interact with. They're no longer just based on a keyboard or based in a machine. They're going to be in our workspaces.
Yeah, they will.
They're going to change the way we do things.
They will. Can you imagine that in a factory environment? Can you imagine that in a work environment, in an office environment?
Yeah.
I imagine that as you were talking, you say in a restaurant, you could be having a conversation and pull out all the distracting noises, I suppose, and you could have your own conversation.
Yeah.
In real time. I suppose you'd need headphones and things like that, but that's just the tools again that are using.
I mean, it's quite amazing. They're just little earbuds.
Yeah.
And one of the founders was giving I can't even remember what his name was giving a talk on this. So if we find something, we can definitely include that in here. I want to play a little word association game with you. Now, with that in mind of bringing things up, Tristan, I want you to bring up some of the images that might come up from this. But I'm going to flash some words to you regarding the field of AI and technology, and I need you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear these words.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Just give me a second and then go. But don't make it a sentence. Just think of the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
All right. Yeah?
On the word.
On the word.
Okay.
On the word. We're going to play a word game. You're going to tell me the first thing that comes to mind when I say one of these words. All right. Ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Algorithm.
Logic.
Machine learning.
FOST.
Android.
Imitation.
Neural network.
Program.
Macchiato. No, I'm just joking.
Coffee? Should we have a coffee?
We have a coffee. Tomorrow's next big thing.
Humanoid.
Data.
Needed.
Computer vision.
A reality.
Automation.
Imminent.
Chatbot.
Valuable.
Supervised learning.
Disruptive.
Microlearning.
Also very valuable.
Artificial.
Artificial. Genuine.
Human.
Real.
Computer.
Outdated.
Reinforced learning.
Reinforced learning. Imminent.
Now, these are all words I had no idea what half of them were. And I thought this was just such a fun thing to play because in this field, the field of AI, there's so many unknowns. People are looking at their jobs and wondering, well, geez, will I still be able to do this in 5 years? Well, you will, but that job might actually change. It might be an integrated job. I think we'll no longer be thinking of securing our skills, but rather integrating our skills. Because, she's, I think with the question of AI, it's easy to kind of put it out as not relevant to me now until it's too late. But also, it's easy to be overconsumed by the kind of overwhelming ways in which it can affect everything.
Yeah.
What ways can we ignore AI, and which ways can we not afford to ignore it?
Well, one of the things we've got to be careful of, I think, is thinking that it won't impact us. And that's one of the things we've got to be careful of. I saw a great, and maybe you can find the images as well, but I saw a great image when they were talking about New York. They had a New York street, a photograph of the New York street. And in this New York street, in the time when horse and carriage was actually used in New York, and horse and carriage became so popular that their biggest problem was they couldn't clean up the feces of the horses. That was the biggest problem in New York. And in one photo, they had horse and carriages, thousands of them, and one Ford motor vehicle.
Yeah.
You know, the original Ford motor vehicle in that picture. Yeah. And it was probably about 10 years later, they took the same photograph in black and white, and there was one horse carriage and thousands of motor vehicles in the same street in New York.
Yeah.
And I know it's a period of 10 years, and we think, oh, well, a lot can change in 10 years. But the speed at which things are moving, we've got to be careful that we think that it won't impact us. It probably won't impact us as negatively if we are just aware of it. But we should be aware that AI is going to impact the way we learn, the way we do our jobs, the way we earn money, the way money is even perceived. It's going to be incredible.
There's a lot of parallels between the disruption of the motor industry becoming a thing in our lives, going from horses to cars. I mean, just in this conversation alone, we've picked up a few parallels there. Safety, ethics. I mean, in terms of the big transformation that's happened with vehicles and safety on the road, you were talking about safety belts. We've got safety belts in our cars, and we're going to need safety belts on our computers, safety belts in our technology. And it takes boldness. It takes companies like Volvo, I think it was, who made the patent for safety belts available to all manufacturers and all people, so that because they believed that safety on the road was something that should be for everyone. Regardless of what car you're buying and what company you're buying it from. How's that going to look with technology?
Well, I mean, motor vehicles are very, very interesting, and we can talk about that. But what is fascinating for me in the motor industry, and generally, I heard recently just a discussion around where's disruption and where does disruption come from? Disruption comes from the outside, meaning if you are an expert at something, the disruption will come from the outside. The most dangerous place to be in at the moment is the expert that considers the past almost the future. So you look at the motor industry. The motor industry, the big motor players are now in danger. And what do I mean? So the Americans had the best motor manufacturer industry about 30 years ago, 40 years ago. The Japanese were recognized as overtaking the Americans. Toyota was overtaking Ford, General Motors, and things like that. Then China came along. China was so far behind, all they did is they let the big motor manufacturers come in, and from the outside, they learned a whole lot, and China will overtake Japan and America, well, it already has, in the motor industry. The automation in the motor vehicle has moved from the ICE vehicle, which is a diesel or petrol vehicle, now to a electrical vehicle. And they're no longer the unsexy vehicles. They are very, very useful, very, very clever. So our buses, our transport is moving to electrical. Our vehicles will, our taxis will. And that will then move into even using AI even more and more, where within the next few, people know this, but in the next few years, we will have automated vehicles that you can buy a vehicle and then you can send it out to do other things without you driving it or anybody driving it. You can hail a taxi in the near future, mostly in the first world or in Europe and in China probably first, that will collect you without a driver. That's already happening in contained cities like in California and some in China. But if you look at Tesla's technology, and some of their automation, soon those are going to scale astronomically.
Yeah.
And all the vehicles that Tesla has created with cameras or any vehicle with a vision system in it will be able to drive itself.
Yeah.
And go through any of the experiences. I mean, the latest one was so funny. The latest release of full self-driving by Tesla was the ability of the car to recognize pedestrians, but not just pedestrians, the actions. So the vehicle recognized the person waving the vehicle to actually go through, even though it had stopped, and it recognized that hand gesture without anybody telling it.
Yeah.
So it learns what a stop sign is, it learns what the speed limit is, it learns where it is, it learns those things like a human being does. And as soon as it learns it, it can be distributed to 1,000 vehicles.
Yeah.
If you took that as a human being, as soon as you learned what a stop sign is, you had to
teach it to the next person.
And that would take hours and hours.
Yeah.
It's not like that with AI.
So I mean, it's technology that is kind of doing the work that people used to do in a large scale. How is that a net positive?
And I'm so glad that you said that, because people immediately think I'm going to lose my job.
Absolutely.
But the positive of this is the biggest benefit is going to come in organizations, in companies. The aim of any company is to maximize its growth and its profit. And one of those things to do that is its human labor.
Yeah.
But if you look at the population at the moment and the young people coming into business, we just don't have enough people.
No.
It sounds crazy, but there's not enough people to build efficiency, effectiveness, and real productivity. And therefore, robots already build cars. Those non-humanoid robots build cars. Soon, humanoid robots will be building all aspects of a car.
Yeah.
But already robots have done so much to improve productivity and manufacturing. They will just move that into the human sciences and creativity, because there's not enough jobs, or there's not enough human beings to create the productivity that's needed in countries.
Yeah.
So we won't lose jobs. We'll just need to change the jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when you say change the jobs, there's a lot of skill development that comes with that. I think what companies, their biggest concern over the last, let's say, maybe not the biggest concern, but in terms of their staff, it certainly is one of their biggest concerns, is staff turnover and talent retention.
Yep.
Now, when we spoke about the motor industry, I think it was Ford who raised their average salaries of workers. And the public idea of this was that it was so that their employees could afford to drive a Ford themselves, you know.
Yes.
But the idea, I think, actually came to more a case of talent retention, because there was more car companies now that were coming up, and Ford was losing their engineers and people to these competitors. What value now do people have to a company from a retention space with all these skills that are coming up new?
So if you look at, this is my observation, but I've heard about it. If you look at Microsoft, Google, a lot of the Teslas of this world, a lot of the computer-driven industries are no longer requiring your degree. They're requiring evidence that you can deliver that work.
Yeah.
So Google, I think, were one of the first where they said, no, don't tell me your degree, show me. And they have learning or demonstration methodologies to show that a person can program or deliver the piece. I think that's what's going to happen in the future. But it's not going to be show me how you do something. It's show me how you use AI to do that better than the other person.
Yeah, yeah.
So you both can do it, but who can use AI better? That's what the future of an employee's interview is going to be.
Because, I mean, you can do your entire degree now using AI.
No.
You can feed it the resources it needs. So let's say I'm looking at these journals, I'm looking at this research, I'm looking at a lot of and all this content now is available in digital formats.
Yeah.
So these learning models are exposed to a lot of these resources and can pull that information for you when you're doing a paper. Now,
So
back in the day, I used to use Google Translate to write a speech in Afrikaans,
yes.
in another language. I can't just submit that speech. I mean, I used to. I'd be, goeiemorgen, mevrou in klas, die hond blaf, everything like that, op my vakansie. And I would just read the direct translation. But you can't really do that in a university space. It's technically plagiarizing, and there are AI tools that now detect where AI has been used in a project or a product, and I'm pretty sure we're very glad for that kind of plagiarism resource, but that gives us a fine line to work off on the collaboration with machine learning. How do I bring me to what I'm working on when I'm working with technology like this?
Yeah.
What's my talent development? Now, I suppose that leads us into one of our key themes of this discussion, which is learning in relation to AI. How can I learn using AI?
That's an interesting concept. If you are going to say, how do I learn better than AI, you're probably barking up the wrong tree. So how do I beat AI? You've lost already.
Yeah.
How do I learn to use AI is the question that we've got to ask ourselves. And yes, that will result in big changes in the industry, or it'll create big changes. I mean, I recently heard a teacher, for example, saying, sure, I spent my week break marking tests and exams. Well, why can't AI mark those exams for you? And that will soon, or how can the teacher learn how to use AI to mark those exams? And why? Because AI has already passed Harvard degrees and all sorts of university exams already. But the teacher, if the teacher's going, well, how am I quicker than AI to mark an exam? Well, that's impossible. But if the teacher says, how do I use AI to actually do something better? That's where the key is.
For people who are new to this topic, I think there's a lot still. I think majority of people are finding themselves confronted with it more and more each day, and it's either something that is stonewalling them from learning more, or it's something that's creating an intrigue. Either way, what's someone's starting place to start interacting with AI? What's the best place for them to begin a skills development approach, or some way of equipping themselves with learning about AI or learning through AI?
Yeah. I think the way AI is going to have an impact for us is the same way as many innovative technologies have. So you take the cell phone as an example. I remember when the cell phone didn't even have a screen and it had the buttons, for example. And was it a Nokia 3310 or whatever it was?
Yeah.
And that's progressive. We went from a Nokia 3310 to a iPhone or a Samsung, whatever it was, smartphone by trial and testing new products that came out.
Totally.
And how we use them. The key is what AI products are out there for you to use. And are you using ChatGPT, or are you using Llama? Are you on top of how Grok, which is Tesla's or Elon's large language model, has a slightly different humor setting to, and now this sounds like a movie, but the humor setting to a ChatGPT. And knowing that some are maybe more biased in a certain way, some of these technologies, but are you using what's out there at the moment is key. In the same way as you had a 3310 and the smartphone came along, you just took it and you tried it and you used it and you grew with it. That's what I think the key is. You've got to use the technology.
It's there.
It's there.
It's accessible.
And find out more and how and what can be used. That's what I say.
Absolutely.
That's the starting point.
Yeah.
It's not having the most knowledge. It's being willing to try. And that's the human.
Because we're not all going to become data scientists and
No.
robotic scientists, AI ethicists and philosophers.
As a matter of fact, let me give you an example of this. A person, 2 years ago, computer programming was the skill to get into, the learning that you must get into.
Yeah.
So a person who didn't know how to program was at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Not today. AI, I mean, you listen to the CEO of NVIDIA. NVIDIA is now one of the biggest businesses in the world. I think they've just crossed $3 trillion valuation. And Jensen says this. He says, you don't have to know how to program. You just have to ask the technology to develop a program for you that can do this. And when you think it's not doing the right thing, you ask it to change the programming, because the programming is done by the computers now. And it's why Microsoft, Google, a lot of the big guys, Meta, lost a number of their staff about 2 years ago. Their programmers were no longer as valuable. Why? Because they didn't need as many programmers to create the programs.
Yeah. It's actually great. I think there's a pretty well-known story now around one of the Tesla engineers who essentially wasted, we can pull it up, he essentially wasted 2 days worth of work, or a few days worth of work. And he needed to account for his time and what he did, because, I mean, that's the culture there. So he asked ChatGPT, or probably more likely Grok, we'll see here, okay, I've wasted 2-3 days of my job. What did I do? What can I say I did with my time to account for it?
Yes.
And then also give me the code for whatever those activities were that will then work around that, because he was a programming engineer. And it came up with the exact, kind of activities that he could have spent. Well, he said, if I had those days, what would I have done? And it said you would have done X, Y, and Z. He said, can you build the code for those activities? It provided that, and he just submitted it. It was working code. It was a working, it was valuable activities. I mean, probably they needed some adjustment. I find if I write something into a GPT, I find I dislike the tone of voice, because it's It's not a personalized tone of voice. It's an aggregated tone of voice. And my brain picks up on that immediately. I'm sure an engineer will look at a technical activity created by an AI function of some sort and be able to go, okay, well, maybe I should just adjust this. Cool. Maybe it's like that.
Well, there's an example of that just comes to mind in the motor industry again, and with Tesla. It's why Tesla can create electrical vehicles at profit, at scale, and most other companies can't. Even the Chinese can't. The American companies can't. But when you look at their structure, your Fords, your GMs, your Stellantis companies who are making good vehicles, they base their decisions at a management level on their policies and procedures and the way to do things. Tesla has policies and procedures, but they've integrated them into using everything in Tesla is about data, and that data is aggregate into and used AI.
Yeah.
So the decision, an engineer can make a decision on changing something in the vehicle. The AI assists that person to make that decision, and Tesla allows that person to go ahead and make that decision using AI. Now, for an organization, that minimizes and minimizes the wasting of time. But in your analogy, what did that person do? They got AI to help them make a decision that was valuable for the business.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to see more and more of.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you will have in your podcast soon a humanoid robot talking to you and asking, I mean, how many times have you even today said, ask ChatGPT?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ask this, And a lot of people are doing that.
And I mean, you could actually get the GPT. We're going to do one episode, I'm sure, at some point where an AI avatar of myself will present. It will use my tone of voice.
And you won't have to do
It
anything.
will write its own script and questions, and it will answer itself.
Yeah.
Should actually do
Here's
that one
the
of the
future.
episodes. Yeah.
It's when the robots are learning from the robots and the people are sitting back doing nothing that's going to be interesting.
I mean, they've done that with Twitter bots. They've had them answer each other or troll each other, and you've had two
Yes.
different kind of GPTs do that, and
Yes.
they get into it gets quite violent, eh? Like they become aggressive. I mean, like it's like Skynet, Terminator kind of levels there, where they have obviously learnt off the language models. I mean, like Grok uses Twitter, for example, as its
Yes,
basis for gathering knowledge. So it must have some kind of filter for that. But I mean, I'm sure Meta, it's also one that's based on a social media platform. Google, its resources are largely in a social media space. So our interaction with technology is one that's we've used as a kind of, wow, we don't have to think about it. It's never been approached before with a first interaction of how should I use it. People just naturally go and do something with it. They'll naturally, put. I remember in Google used to put inverted commas to ask it a question. Now you don't need to do that. You can just type in the word and it will come up with keywords. But we treat Google as a person. We treat ChatGPT as a person because we don't yet, in our minds, have an understanding for asking a function that is not a human things that we can't put our tone of voice into.
And in the most simplest form, we should be asking ourselves, of the people and out there now who are listening, how many people are typing in ChatGPT questions or are having a conversation with ChatGPT or any large language model? And even that, people are moving, as soon as they realize they can just talk to the large language model without typing the question in, there's a jump, there's a step change.
Yeah.
And that's the next step change that's coming, is we won't be, in a year's time, you won't be typing in anything to a large language model. You will be doing what you do with Alexa or Siri.
Siri, yeah.
You'll be talking about it. And that's a good example, even where your Siris by Apple and your Alexas by Amazon have been overtaken by other technologies using AI and using voice.
Absolutely.
So that's going to be very interesting.
Thank you so much for your time.
It's been great.
It was an absolutely fantastic discussion. Let us know what questions you have. What have you asked ChatGPT before? What associations came up in your mind when it was that word game and we were looking at the different parts of AI? What the heck is a chatbot? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out on the next episode.
Please mind the gap between the train and the platform.